What has been the best who's laughing now moment of your life so far? My husband asked me why the tire company Michelin gives out stars to restaurants. I laughed and told him it was cute how he actually thought the tire company and the restaurant rating people were the same company. For about a week I kept rubbing it in his face. My husband the poor fool lol. One night he gets fed up and Googles the damn thing. A minute later he's holding the phone in my face. It is the same company and I'm the ignorant twat after all. He rubs it in my face at least once a week. Edit, thanks for the gold. I've told this story before, but when I was about 9 years old we had a project at school to write a story. It was kind of a big deal, and I worked super hard on it. I had just passed my I want to be a paleontologist when I grow up stage, and I was firmly in my I want to be a writer stage, so I put a lot of effort in. This thing was pages and pages long. I was staying up until way past my bedtime for a week before just to get this thing finished. I poured my little heart and soul into it, because in my mind it was only a matter of time before it caught the eye of some passing book publisher. Shut up, it could happen, and jetted me to fame and fortune and literary celebrity all before I was in double-digit ages. We had to hand it in over the Christmas break, and when we got back in January I found out that she had lost it. Worse than that, she was accusing me of not handing it in, even though I very clearly had, and decide to call me out in front of the whole class for being lazy and not doing the work. I ended up spending most of the next class crying in the bathroom because I was so upset. Eventually it turned up after all. No shit it did, and she still only gave me a middling grade for it, as a result of it being handed in late. Which it wasn't. The who's laughing now moment? Now I write books for a living and I'm happy as a clam doing it, so frick you, Mrs. Harding. I got fired because I was rude to the client. In reality, I shut down a troublesome employee of the client who had been harassing my team for months over something that, by his own admission, he had no stake in, and who had been warned multiple times by the client themselves to leave us alone. Also in reality, the company was trying to find an excuse for me, probably because they couldn't skim money off my contract the way they could with the fresh hires. The client snapped me up without even an interview the moment a position opened up. Same people, same workplace, not the rude one, same systems, basically the same job. $13,000 raise. They tried to sue for breach of contract, but I had made sure all my bases were legally covered. Oh, and my old company lost all their work with this client, hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of contracts. I haven't stopped laughing since they fired me. My mom's boyfriend died when I was 14. It was my first experience with death and I had a hard time dealing with it. I had very realistic dreams where I would get up in the morning and he would be sitting at the table drinking his coffee just like always. Part of me knew completely that this was a dream, but part of me wanted to believe that he was visiting me in my dreams. I made the mistake of telling a friend and unfortunately news got around the school that I was seeing ghosts everywhere. My girlfriend's friend was absolutely the worst about this and further pushed the rumor that I saw him in a can of Pepsi. Shortly after this rumor started going around, my girlfriend and I were having lunch when her awful friend came by drinking a Pepsi and sat down next to us. My girlfriend was also sort of mean to me and I noticed in my peripheral vision that her friend was looking in her Pepsi can, and she was laughing. I turned fully to look and she was making a ghost sound and waving the can around. As I got up to leave, she took a sip of her soda and immediately started screaming and ran to the nurse's office. It turns out as she was mocking me, a wasp had flown onto her can, and as she raised it to her dumb face, the wasp stung her on the bottom lip. She never made fun of me again. Bob Monkhouse had the best reverse of this ever. When I said I was going to become a comedian, they all laughed. Well, they're not laughing now, are they? Left an abusive home at 18 and became homeless instantly. My stepdad said I'd be hooked on drugs or worse. Mom said I was a failure. Ended up landing an IT gig in 7 months making $4 more than their current salary. Good times edit, meant to say $4 more per hour, so $22, from $18 edit, It's a pretty long story, but I've been into computers since I was young. Built my first website back during the Netscape days. This was back in '99 around the 4th grade. Took all comp class in high school. Anyways, I grew up in super abusive home. My mom is foreign and she held the belief that you had to train your kid, which involved beatings to the point of blackout. Teachers started noticing when my sister showed up to middle school beat up. Never met my dad. Stepdad was pretty military-like, saw him maybe once out of the week, wouldn't speak to me. I was suicidal, living under the care. Though with the help of a few random internet guys I pulled myself out, and plotted my escape. So right after high school graduation I moved cross-country with $80, a backpack, 2 of my favorite books and a jar of peanuts. I ended up in a homeless youth program on day 3. They had a pilot program internship program at the time with a tech company, and I got in through the program. No one, even the staff, knew what this consisted of. They just said I could learn something. Towards the end of the internship they told us about 12, that they had one possible position open. Everyone else really didn't care too much, and figured we'd all apply later. I applied the day I got on the computer. During the interview process, I was insanely nervous as I was going against guys with a lot more credentials than I had. Somehow I made it through the 3rd and final panel. The hiring lady had asked me a question to something to the effect, "Why should we hire you?" So I decided to screw it and literally told the recruiter everything I knew about programming and web development. From building sites on Dreamweaver, to the time I furiously smashed my keyboard. Got the offer a few days later, and worked from 5 AM till 10 PM overtime to get my financials straight. I should mention the revenge part is that my mom felt that I was too young/naive, and tried everything to get me fired. No way in hell a kid your age should be working making that money. What do you think you're doing, Mom? I made the stupid mistake of telling them where I worked and they said I wouldn't make it. They called the company support line over a dozen times threatening to sue. They would leave nasty voicemails, and told everyone in my family he ran away from home to California to become a gay prostitute living in a motel. To this day my uncle still questions my sexuality and choice of friends despite me having a girlfriend. My story ended up in the local paper, but unfortunately I can't find it, otherwise I'd link it. Granted, this all happened back in 2010. Edit: the books in question are 48 Laws of Power and Anxiety and Phobia Workbook 4th edition. Thank guys for all your kind support. Not me, but one of my best friends from high school. We had this awful physics teacher who was constantly telling us, friend, me and a couple of others specifically, about how terrible we are at the subject and how we should rather give up on science and opt for commerce instead. Fast forward a year of barely passing the subject, we're writing our final exam in the 12th grade. What's interesting about this exam is that the papers get sent to India for grading rather than this school and teacher, as it's a board exam. Turns out that my friend who was barely passing had topped in the physics exam, and this same teacher had to give him a certificate and prize for that at a ceremony. I went along just to see his face. It was totally worth it. So, our high school had a dodgeball tournament to close out the year. I had always been in the nerdy group at school and always made a team with a bunch of my band buddies. We were the Pokémen, if that gave you any idea on nerdiness. Well, we went and did pretty well in this tournament. In fact, we made it to the championship round. We were going against members of the football team, including the guy that had bullied me from grades 2 to 8. Nobody really bullied me after that since I grew to 6 feet 6 inches. Anyway, tournament starts. I immediately run and grab a ball and start backpedaling. I throw the ball as hard as I can and it hit my bully in the face. He falls backward a bit, regains his composure and starts laughing at me as headshots don't count. While he is busy laughing, I throw another balls and hit him straight in the crotch. It was like out of a movie. Except I was so excited that I stopped paying attention, got hit in the gut, and we lost the championship. The biggest bully of my childhood was actually a teacher. I'm not sure why she hated me so much, but she'd often say things like, make sure to dress for success. You don't want to look like irrelevant username 3 over there. I was poor and had shabby, punkish clothes. Always wore the same black hoodie. But I graduated, got my master's, and make 3 times as much as her in a great job. I was invited back to the school to talk about my field and give advice about going to college. I gave my talk wearing my old black hoodie. Trod on rake once, it flipped up and blasted me in the face with its handle. Chucked that motherfucker in the furnace. Frick you, rake.